In February 1992, at the Eastern Creek Raceway near Sydney, Andy Wallace climbed into a race car moving at 310 kilometers per hour through a high-speed left-hand corner. It was a test day like any other. Routine, professional, careful. But somewhere between the apex and the exit, he felt something catastrophic occur inside his chest. Two ribs cracked instantly, not from a crash, not from an impact, just from driving. Weeks later, his teammate Hitoshi Ogawa experienced the exact same injury at the exact same corner in the exact same car. What kind of machine could break two professional drivers without ever touching a wall? The answer lies in the final days of one of motorsport's greatest eras. Between 1982 and 1993, the FIA Group C category produced the fastest, most technologically advanced race cars ever built for endurance racing. But in 1992, as this extraordinary era was collapsing, Toyota arrived with a machine so extreme it seemed to defy the laws of both physics and reason. This is the story of the Toyota TS010, a 13,000 RPM V10 masterpiece with 50 valves that set lap records, but never won the race it was built to win. This is the story of the car that almost conquered Le Mans, but fell victim to the very forces that made it legendary. To understand why the TS010 matters, we must first understand what Group C was. In 1982, the FIA created a category that approached racing from a revolutionary angle. Instead of limiting engine size like Formula One, Group C cars faced a fuel consumption limit. Teams could use any engine they wanted, big turbocharged engines or small naturally aspirated ones, as long as they could make it to the finish line on a restricted fuel allocation. It was brilliant. It forced manufacturers to balance raw power with efficiency. Mercedes, Porsche, Jaguar, and Nissan threw billions into the category. Through the 1980s, it became the most exciting motorsport series in the world. These were faster than Formula One cars in many ways, capable of reaching speeds over 240 miles per hour down Le Mans' famous Mulsanne Straight. The Mercedes-Benz C9 in 1989 touched 400 kilometers per hour. These machines were living laboratories of engineering extremism. But nothing lasts forever. By 1989, turbocharged engines had become so powerful, so dangerous, that they were threatening the sport itself. Drivers were struggling to control cars generating massive downforce and horsepower. Something had to change. The FIA's solution was decisive. From 1991 onward, all Group C cars would be powered by 3.5-liter naturally aspirated engines derived from Formula One. No turbos. No more unlimited engineering freedom. Just raw displacement and meticulous engineering. For most manufacturers, this was the moment to exit. Mercedes-Benz, the dominant force in 1989, announced in November 1991 that they would not compete. Jaguar followed. Porsche's legendary 956 and 962 were obsolete overnight. The costs of developing new F1-derived engines were staggering. Essentially the same technology that powered Grand Prix cars, now squeezed into sports car prototypes. Private teams couldn't afford it. Even factory efforts were questioning the economics. But three manufacturers were determined: Peugeot, Mazda, and one Japanese company that saw an opportunity to prove itself on motorsport's biggest stage: Toyota. For years, Toyota had competed in Group C with turbocharged V8s developed by Dome and Tom's Racing. These were competitive machines. In 1990, they'd finished sixth at Le Mans with Masanori Sekiya behind the wheel. A respectable result, but not championship material. When the 1991 regulations changed, Toyota made a bold decision. They would sit out the 1991 season entirely, take a year to develop, and re-enter the championship in 1992 with a completely new car. They would build the TS010, and they would build it to win. The design brief was unforgiving. The car needed to be lighter than Peugeot's 905. It needed to be faster. Most importantly, it needed to be reliable. Toyota engaged Tony Southgate, a legendary race car designer who had worked for Tom Walkinshaw Racing. Southgate had proven he understood how to build winning prototypes. His job was clear: create a platform that could carry a new Toyota V10 engine and dominate the final chapters of Group C racing. The result was a carbon fiber monocoque that weighed just 750 kilograms. 750 kilograms for a machine that could achieve sustained speeds above 300 kilometers per hour. Every component was engineered for an exact purpose. The suspension used innovative double wishbone designs with pushrod actuation. The aerodynamic body produced between 5,249 and 7,298 pounds of downforce depending on configuration. The dimensions were optimized: 4,800 millimeters long, 2,000 millimeters wide, just 1,030 millimeters tall. It looked like a fighter jet designed by someone who had never seen a road. It looked like the future. And then there was the engine. The Toyota V10. This machine was the real story. 5 valves per cylinder. 10 cylinders. 50 valves total. That's not a typo. 50 valves operating in perfect synchronization, breathing at 13,000 revolutions per minute. The engine displaced 3,500 cubic centimeters exactly, the regulatory maximum, and it produced either 700 horsepower in qualifying trim or a more conservative 600 horsepower for the 24-hour Le Mans race. But horsepower doesn't explain the V10's significance. The engine was actually 3 things at once. It was a race engine, it was a Formula One derivative, and it was a test bed. Toyota was using the TS010's development to advance its understanding of multi-valve technology and high RPM engine design. Every component was monitored, every data point recorded. This wasn't just about winning at Le Mans. This was about Toyota building the engineering knowledge that would eventually lead to Formula One competitiveness. The TS010 wasn't just a race car, it was a rolling laboratory. The V10 sound was otherworldly. Listen to footage from any TS010 running at speed, and you'll hear something between a chainsaw and a banshee, a wailing, high-pitched scream that reached 13,000 RPM. It was the sound of 50 valves opening and closing 6,500 times per second. It was the sound of 5 liters of fuel burning every 100 kilometers. It was the sound of engineering perfection and the immense physical stress that came with it. On April 26, 1992, the TS010 made its racing debut in the 1992 World Sports Car Championship season opener at Monza, Italy. Toyota fielded 2 cars with experienced drivers. Jeff Lees and Hitoshi Ogawa piloted one car. The conditions were dry and hot. The track was challenging. And standing in their way was the Peugeot 905 Evo 1B, which had been developed since 1990 and represented Peugeot's complete understanding of the new formula. Through the early laps, it seemed like Peugeot's experience would dominate. The works, Peugeot's led the race. But then, something remarkable happened. With his co-driver Hitoshi Ogawa overheating and radiating concerns about the car's temperature, Jeff Lees drove with perfect precision. He held position, he waited for his opportunity, and crucially, he didn't make mistakes. Meanwhile, Yannick Dalmas, sharing the leading Peugeot with Derek Warwick, made a critical error in the closing laps. Almost in sight of the flag, at the end of the race, Dalmas crashed the Peugeot 905. He crashed it in the final moments. Jeff Lees crossed the finish line in the TS010, and Toyota had achieved what no Japanese manufacturer had ever achieved in a World Championship sports car race: victory. It was a win under extraordinary circumstances, but it was a win, a legitimate factory victory. For a moment, everything seemed possible for Toyota and the TS010. But within weeks, tragedy intruded. Hitoshi Ogawa, the co-driver who had shared that victory with Jeff Lees at Monza, returned to Japan for a Formula 3000 race at Suzuka. On May 24, 1992, during a passing attempt, Ogawa's car collided with another vehicle. His Lola went airborne, cleared a tire barrier, and crashed violently into a pole. Ogawa was killed instantly. He was 26 years old. Just days after scoring a historic victory, one of Toyota's brightest drivers was gone. But there is another story about the TS010 that few people know. In February 1992, a month before that Monza victory, Andy Wallace and a team of more than 50 engineers camped at Eastern Creek Raceway in Australia for 9 consecutive days of testing. The TS010 was being prepared for Le Mans. Every aspect needed validation. Every system needed data. Turn 1 at Eastern Creek was a high-speed left-hander. Drivers took it flat out. There was a bump in the middle of the corner. Andy Wallace went through. Suddenly, his ribs cracked. 2 of them. He felt a massive jolt. But more remarkably, he kept going. He completed the lap. He was shocked. He was in pain. But he didn't crash. He pulled into the pits and told the team he was done for the day. Then Hitoshi Ogawa got in the car for his turn. Same testing protocol, same corner, same bump, same result. 1 hour into his driving time, Ogawa's ribs broke in exactly the same manner and at exactly the same location. The team didn't understand what was happening. The car wasn't crashing, there were no impacts, yet their drivers were being injured. The analysis revealed something extraordinary about the TS010's physics. Formula One drivers and endurance racing drivers experience 5 to 6 G-forces regularly when cornering at speed. But those forces come gradually. A driver enters a corner, feels the G-loads building, experiences them sustained, then exits. It's manageable by the human body. The TS010 was different. The massive bump at Eastern Creek created a sudden jolt. This jolt produced a rapid shift in G-force direction. Combined with the extreme downforce of the TS010, 7,298 pounds at full trim, and the inevitable bone fatigue that comes from driving 2-hour endurance stints day after day, the sudden spike in G-forces was enough to fracture ribs. The TS010 wasn't a violent machine. It wasn't a crude machine. It was actually too refined. It was so precisely engineered, so aggressively aerodynamic, so physically demanding, that it exceeded the tolerance limits of human physiology. Andy Wallace kept the broken ribs secret. He knew if he told the team, he'd be replaced for the next test and eventually pulled from Le Mans. So he competed in the Sebring 12 hours 3 weeks later with broken ribs. He drove in pain. And he survived. But the story of the TS010 breaking drivers without crashing became part of motorsport legend. It was christened the Bone Crusher. The 1992 24 Hours of Le Mans took place on June 20th to 21st. Toyota entered 3 TS010 cars. They had 1 Monza victory. They had momentum. They had a car that set lap records. They were fast enough to win. Everybody knew it. The Peugeot 905 was the defending winner from 1991, or rather, the defending class winner, since the TS010 hadn't even existed in 1991. This was the first time the new TS010 would face the established Peugeot machinery in endurance trim. The race unfolded in complicated weather. Rain at the start. Wet Michelin tires on the Peugeots and Mazdas had an advantage. Goodyears on the Toyotas struggled, but as the race progressed and conditions dried, the TS010 showed its real pace. By daylight on Sunday, it was clear that Toyota could win. The car was fast. It was holding together. The drivers were professional and experienced. Masanori Sakiya, Kenny Atchison, Pierre-Henri Raffanel. They knew how to drive 24 hours. They had experience. But Le Mans has a way of humbling even the best-prepared teams. The leading TS010 began to suffer from electrical issues. Then the transmission, always a vulnerability in high-performance racing cars, started to show stress. By the final hours, the Peugeot 905 with Derek Warwick, Yannick Dalmas, and Mark Blundell had built a commanding lead. They were hitting fuel consumption targets. Their car was running smoothly. Meanwhile, the TS010 that finished second was misfiring, losing power, struggling to keep pace. When the checkered flag fell, the Peugeot 905 had claimed victory. Behind it, the Toyota TS010 crossed the line in second place. It was 6 laps behind. 6 laps might not sound like much in a 24-hour race, that's perhaps 30 minutes of lost time. But in sports car racing, 6 laps between first and second is a commanding victory margin. Toyota had achieved a Le Mans podium. Masanori Sakiya became the first Japanese driver ever to stand on the podium at the 24 Hours of Le Mans. It was a historic achievement. But it was also a defeat. And it was clear now that the TS010 would never win Le Mans. The Peugeot 905 had proven its reliability. The Peugeot had proven its pace. The Peugeot had the experience. But more than that, the 1992 Le Mans result revealed something troubling. The cars that dominated sports car racing weren't the cars with the best engineering. They were the cars with the best reliability and the most testing. Peugeot had been developing the 905 since 1990. Toyota had created the TS010 from scratch in 1991. 1 year of development versus 2 years. It showed. For 1993, Toyota focused entirely on Le Mans. They abandoned the World Championship season. There were no other races scheduled. Just the 24 hours. 3 new TS010s were built. They tested relentlessly. They believed they had solved the problems. Transmission development, electrical system refinement, aerodynamic optimization, everything pointed to a Toyota victory. But Le Mans is a place where victory is never guaranteed. The 1993 race was supposed to be a replay of 1992, Peugeot versus Toyota in the ultimate battle. Instead, it became a story of mechanical attrition. One of the TS010's was punted from behind by a GT car and had to limp back to the pits. Others suffered gearbox issues and transmission problems. The one that was running well at mid-race was delayed by electrical gremlins. By the time dawn broke on Sunday, the situation was clear. Peugeot was going to win again. The Peugeot 905 achieved a perfect 1-2-3 sweep in 1993. 3 Peugeots crossed the line first, second, and third. The lead car was driven by Eric Ellery, Christophe Bouchou, and Jeff Brabham. The TS010 that finished best-managed 4th place, 4th, behind the Peugeots that had dominated the race, but ahead of older Group C entries and the privateers running Porsche 962s. By 1993, it was clear that the Group C era was over. The World Sports Car Championship had been cancelled. The 1993 Le Mans was actually the last great stand of Group C racing. A handful of cars. A small grid. The days of manufacturer dominance and unlimited budgets were finished. The 1992 regulations requiring 3.5-liter naturally aspirated engines had proven to be an economic dead end. The costs were too high. The sponsorship wasn't there. The manufacturers were losing interest. Mercedes had left. Jaguar had left. Porsche had left. Nissan had left. Even Peugeot, after dominating the final years of Group C, announced they would exit sports car racing. Peugeot instead became an engine supplier for Formula One. They left the world of endurance racing to focus on the pinnacle of motorsport. And Toyota stayed. Through 1994, they continued to field TS010's at Le Mans. They eventually moved to the GT1 category and later the LMP1 class. The TS010 program, though it never achieved a Le Mans victory, gave Toyota invaluable engineering experience. The multi-valve technology developed in the V10 engine would influence Toyota's racing programs for decades. The understanding of carbon fiber construction and aerodynamic optimization informed future projects. The lessons learned about managing extreme G-forces and driver physiology contributed to safer race car design. The TS010 that broke drivers' ribs became a symbol of something beyond mere racing. It represented an era when manufacturers believed that motorsport victory was worth any cost, when teams had budgets measured in tens of millions of dollars, when engineering possibility was limited only by imagination and physics. The TS010 was possibly the finest ever Toyota race car. Some argue it was actually a superior chassis to the Peugeot 905, but it arrived in an era when experience and reliability mattered more than pure engineering excellence. In the end, the Toyota TS010 was a car that set lap records but never won the race it was built to win. It was a machine so extreme it broke its drivers without crashes. It was a testament to what one manufacturer could achieve in a single year of concentrated development. It was also a requiem for an entire racing category. By 1994, Group C was finished. The 3.5-liter formula had collapsed under its own economic weight. The TS010 became the last gasp of an extraordinary era. Today, preserved examples of the TS010 still exist. They are driven in historic racing events. The sound of that V10 at 13,000 RPM still echoes off the walls at circuits around the world. And everyone who hears it remembers a time when Japanese engineering ambition collided with European sports car tradition. And for one shining moment in 1992, that ambition achieved victory. But it was only a moment, and the victory was only one, against a category that was already dying. The Toyota TS010 remains one of motorsport's greatest what-ifs. What if Toyota had started in 1990 instead of 1991? What if Group C had survived? What if Hitoshi Ogawa had lived to drive another season? What if the transmission had held at Le Mans in 1993? But in racing, as in life, the realm of what if is endless. What matters is what actually happened. And what actually happened is that the Toyota TS01 arrived as Group C was ending, raced with brilliance and speed, pushed the limits of human endurance to the breaking point, but never won the trophy it was designed to claim. It was a magnificent failure, a beautiful tragedy, and a lasting testament to what Japanese engineering could achieve when given the chance to compete on motorsport's grandest stage.